Yo, what's shaking AC?
How are ya? My hand is what's shaking.
Yeah,
Hoping it's actually shaking for real.
exactly. For those of you listening to us on a podcast streaming network, Angela's shaking or waving her hand.
Yeah, I was waving. I was like, "Hey, Robert."
Yep.
Yeah. And speaking of that, one thing I learned is that when people can see your hands, that it helps build trust. So now Robert, for those of you that are listening, is holding his hands up on the screen. But yeah, it's good to it's people want to kind of it makes sense when you think about it, right? Like if somebody's got their hand behind their back or something, you definitely be concerned. Okay, you can put your
Absolutely.
hands down now. I
I could
trust
put
you.
I could put them down now.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, you can put them down now. But anyway, I thought that was an interesting tip I got from a speaker once, and I thought it might explain, I don't know, some things about when you look at people on Zoom and then they have their hands up, they have their hands down. I don't know, just something to be aware of.
Yeah. Okay. Well, my phone is ringing. Everyone like the lines are calling in. Everyone has questions.
All our callers or all our listeners,
Yeah.
right? Well, what
But
are they asking? What question are they asking?
well, actually, they're literally calling and sending me text messages. So one of the questions was actually something that we were touched on during one of these roundtables that we were at, right? So we've been talking about a lot about franchisee profitability. And, you were on Clubhouse talking about unlocking hidden profitability. We talk about all this sort of stuff and the biggest gaps, et cetera, et cetera. And it all sort of boils down to one thing, is making sure that your franchisees are proactively supported, right? And that transcends just franchising, right? If you have a business that's got multiple locations, like a Walmart or something, and you've got regional managers and directors, those people need to be proactively supported as well, right? But without digressing there, back to franchising, supporting your team. And sometimes, you think, well, listen, I've got these awesome team members. Why don't I enlist them to help me support my team? Like getting
You
a
mean,
franchise.
oh,
Like
okay. Yeah.
getting a franchisee to be a franchise business coach, right? And that was one of the subjects of this roundtable. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So I wanted to talk about that because it totally flipped my like mind on what it could be. I went into that thinking it might be a good idea, and I left thinking it might not be such a good idea.
I call it one of those $1,000,000 questions.
Yeah.
So then we did our job. We just kept you on. We did our job at that roundtable. I mean, ideally at every roundtable people leave with a lot of, I guess, I mean, they did leave with clarity, but the clarity was that there is no perfect answer on this one. So yeah, so tell me what when you thought it might not be a good idea, what stood out to you that you thought, oh yeah, I can see that concern or this concern.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, I would have thought it was a good idea because if you have a great performing franchisee who's nailed it, follows the system, all that sort of stuff, has good time management, they can go help the other franchisees because they've been in there, they're a third party, there's somebody that's more trusted, they're able to help them and they know what they're doing, right? And I'm like, this is a no-brainer. But then I get it onto this roundtable. I'm like, all right, there's a few problems that we're gonna encounter here. If your franchisee is coaching other franchisees, the other franchisees may start thinking, well, this is just a puppet for head office. You lose that sort of independence or third party. They're just pushing head office's narrative. They're just regurgitating what the government says, right? The second thing, do you want me to keep going or do you want to talk about that?
Can I just touch on that real quick here because yeah, I just wanted to say it a little bit of a different way. I know the point you're saying, and that's how it landed on you. For me, it's also that it becomes sort of like politics, like it creates some politics. And what I caught too, that I sort of thought about before, but just to hear other people say it, is that the franchisee initially has more credibility because franchisees listen more to their peers, which is a fact. I mean, I've been there, I've been a franchisee and felt that like more trusting of my peers. And so they're listening to them. But at some point, like that field person, that franchisee that becomes a field coach has to be on the side of the franchisor when it comes to that role. So they really kind of become, on that franchisor home office team. And so that peer-to-peer thing starts to eventually fade. One person said it's about 3 years. I mean, that's just subjective, but to recognize that benefit can fade off, and the person can, the franchisee that's being coached on the other side of things can say, well, you haven't been directly in the acting as a franchisee, so you don't get it anymore, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, what's something else you caught?
Something else was, well, I mean, now another one's coming to me, but let me stay on the same track here. Is another thing is, will that franchisee coach now stop paying attention to their business?
Right.
Will their focus get digressed, right? A third one that came to me was like, okay, so how does compensation work? Do you start to get into a mess of like how much they're paying for royalties and all that sort of stuff? Like, do you give them a discount? Do you not give them a discount? All like there's problems that could arise from this.
Yeah, we didn't get into that conversation a whole lot. I meant to, and then it just was such a meaty conversation. But I do think you'd look at what compensation you're giving and it depends on are they full time or not. But you look at your other coach team members, and I would probably not go anywhere near royalties and things like that, because I feel like that could be just opening up a massive can of worms. But yeah, so those are some things. Yeah, my general takeaway has always been that it can work, but there's a lot more to it than you think. I think one of the biggest things that people don't necessarily take into account is that, I said this at the roundtable, you can be a really good soccer player, but it doesn't mean you'd be a good soccer coach.
Right.
So, we talk all the time at AC Inc. about the importance of getting the right person in the field, and what are the traits and skills and soft skills we talk a lot about that they need to have. And a franchisee might or might not have those soft skills or those leadership skills to deal with those big conflicts and challenges that come up. Now, if they're high performer, they probably do have some of that, but do they know specifically how to coach another franchisee on what they've learned, or what they know? Just because they know it doesn't mean they can automatically coach it. So I think that's something that, people overlook. They just think, oh, this franchisee is good at this. Just because they're good in their operations of their business doesn't mean they're a good business coach.
Yeah. And there's softer things that come along with coaching. It's not just like, let's set up your timetable so you're good at time management. You dive into people's whys, what their background is. And so now you've got privacy issues, like you've got a work colleague for a period of years, and all of a sudden this work colleague knows your entire financial history, everything that's been going on in your family, what's going wrong, what's going right. They need this information to be a proper coach, or in other words, a fractional coach. They need to get in there, and otherwise they're just a consultant, and they're just going to swing in and just tell and then move on.
Yeah. And the other thing with the other field coaches can feel undermined if they're not franchisees. And initially people think, well, I want the one that's been a franchisee because they'll be the best one at this, at coaching and helping me grow my business. But that can undermine the people that have worked so hard to build credibility, because that's a very common pain point in the field, is that the person that is trying to build credibility, how can they do that? That would be a really good roundtable, or sorry, not roundtable, rant topic for another time, how to build credibility when you're in the field and you're not like, you haven't been a franchisee, or you're younger, or you don't have that backstory that really lends the credibility. So yeah. Anything else you picked up or takeaways?
I mean, I there's always so many takeaways, but there's like 3 or 4 that I took away. Like we could keep this rant going for hours. I mean, most of our rants are like that, so I don't want to veer off down different rabbit holes. But it just goes to show how, a lot of people just chalk coaching up to something super simple. Like, let's just get somebody to help them, or somebody experienced to help them. But there's all these different nuances as to where their experience comes from, what else gets wrapped into the role. It's not just like,
I'd say the biggest takeaway from that roundtable, and anytime I've had these conversations with people, is that you got to super vet them and properly coach them to be that coach and set expectations. And then if you're using a franchisee, then you also have to set expectations with the other franchisees in the system. Like, there's a lot more to it than going, oh, this will just work. That's my big message.
Let's wrap it up.
Okay.
3, 2, 1.
Go
be awesome.